again, and welcome back to another sound design tutorial where today we're doing another Blipsounds competition, which is something we haven't done in a very long time. So I'm really looking forward to diving into this with you. With me, I've got, I don't know if you can hear him in the background, I've got my partner in crime, Vinny. Vinny, what do you make of this? What do you make of this competition, mate?
Snore, Z.
Vinny, I said, what do you make of this competition, mate?
Well, why do they always use the same games for this competition? League of Legends, Smash Bros, Overwatch, Old Republic. Why can't they use an actual good game like Nintendo?
Oh, come off it, Vinny. Mate, that game came out in like 2006. No one's playing that anymore. Now, in case you don't know what a Blipsounds sound design competition is, the YouTube channel Blipsounds, there's a few guys over there running it, they do a monthly sound design competition where they'll take something from a game, an animation or an action or something, and they'll set you a challenge to recreate the sound for it. And for this month, they're doing Star Wars The Old Republic, and using only one sound source, we have to recreate the sound of like an electric attack. If you're interested in taking part yourself, I highly recommend you go check out their channel. It's a really good source if you're really into your sound design, not only for learning, but for taking part in competitions like this. And I'll have links in the description for you to go find them. For me, I've chosen a kettle, and you'll see why in a bit. It turns out kettles, there's a lot of variation that you can get from them sound-wise. They don't just make a boiling sound. They can make little squeaks. They can make rubbing sounds. They can, make low rumbles. It's really interesting. So that's what I've decided to go for. And before I start, I just want to quickly show you the recordings I got from the kettle. So most of the sounds, they sound like this. Right? It's a lot of just the kettle boiling, basically. And the idea is, if I go back to the animation, I kind of want that long boiling sound to represent the electricity as we're in the middle of the attack. We have got some interesting variations as well. We've got sounds like this. But when the kettle's starting up, that sounds really cool. I really like that. We've got some squeaky lid sounds. Might come in handy as well. We've got the actual water bubbling. I'm hoping those bubble sounds can kind of add like a high-end hiss to the electric sound. That's the plan anyway. Oh, some really deep bubbles there. And yeah, just generally loads of variations of the water boiling. And so I've got a feeling this might come out fairly well. Hopefully, we'll have to see. Okay, so I've done a bit of tweaking. I've done a bit of chopping and organising of those sounds. So let me quickly talk about what I've done so far. First thing I've done is I've gone through this animation or this clip, and I've just made markers at certain points in time when something significant happens that I want to kind of communicate or emphasize through the sound. So the first one is obviously the start of the attack. Not only do I want to play the main electric sound when the attack begins, but I kind of want another sound to play to kind of almost indicate to the player that the attack has begun. It's just going to be a short little thud or a little click or something just to say, right, we're attacking. The next marker indicates a glow. What will happen is around the player there's like this bright yellow aura that starts to appear, so I want something to kind of fade in for that. There's the next marker here, the third one. What happens is, and I don't know if this is just, I guess this is just how it works in the game, this is the mechanics of it, is the electricity suddenly cuts off and stops. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to cut all my sounds short, I'm going to stop them and then have them fade back in gradually. Because what happens is after the electricity stops, if I quickly skip ahead, it appears back, but it kind of slowly comes back to the player. They kind of retract the electricity. Then the next marker is a ripple. If I quickly skip it along, you can see there's like this purple ripple that appears. Oh, there you go. And there's the yellow glow as well. So there's the yellow glow, and there's the purple ripple that kind of appears around the player. So obviously I want a sound to represent that. And we've got the end of the attack. So I haven't added anything yet, but maybe I'll add a little sound to communicate the end. I don't know. We'll see. And then there's an extra attack at the end. So I've just got a start marker and an end marker for that. So let's talk about the sounds and what I've got and what I've done with those kettle recordings. So the first one is the attack sound. Let me quickly solo that and play that to you. So that is, all that is pretty much clicking the little on button on the kettle and slamming the lid down. So that's not going to be anything too special, too detailed. Again, it's just a thud to say the sound's begun. Next is the sustained sounds. Let me solo that. So what that is basically a combination of a lot of different recordings of the kettle. Some where the mic's close, some where it's far away. Some where I actually opened up the lid of the kettle and put the microphone in as close as I could without damaging it. So we could really hear like, you know, the water boiling. Some of it's with the kettle with no water in, some of it's with a lot, and so on. And I've just layered them all together to get a really cool texture. But I'll quickly break down what we've got. There we go. And what you hopefully heard at the end there, where I've marked this break marker, is that kind of chop I mentioned earlier, where I want the sounds to cut off and then come back in. What I did is I took all these sustained recordings, chopped them, and I then reversed the endings, which you hopefully should have heard there as well. Again, because the electricity is kind of coming back towards the player. Moving on, we've got the sounds representing the yellow glow. So let me quickly solo that and play that for you. And what I've done with these, even though I haven't really done any processing in terms of plugins, what I did with these is I've kind of stretched the recording and squished them together. So now they've got this kind of almost distortion sound to them. So that already gives a really weird sound that I think it's going to work quite well. Finally, we've got some sounds for the purple shockwave, so let's have a listen to them. And again, it's the same kind of technique. I'm just taking long recordings of the kettle, squishing them down. Again, that's another like minute or so of recording of the kettle just being squished down. And that's pretty much it. So no processing at the moment. So that's step 2 done. Step 3, I guess, would be to mess around with some processing. And as I go through that, I might take some of these tracks out and replace them. I'll let you know as I go through. Okay, so I've done a bit of tweaking, specifically to the attack sounds. And I found a place to start, basically, that I really like. So I just want to share with you what that sounds like. Sounds pretty cool, doesn't it? A good way to start the sound. So if I quickly show you the processing I've added to the first track, which is the kettle click. Well, first of all, I stretched it out again. I stretched both of them out, which, by the way, if you don't know how to do in Reaper, you just hold Alt whilst dragging the track itself like that, and it stretches instead of actually exposing more of the track. First thing, done a bit of EQ just to get rid of any low frequencies I didn't want, and also brought out the high frequencies. Compressed it a bit just to make the attack quite sharp and have it come in really quickly and suddenly, you know, again, to kind of emphasize it's just a quick sound that kind of says to the player, okay, the sound has been activated. And I used a bit of reverb from this new plugin I've recently got. I say recently, I got this like 3 months ago and I still haven't used it yet. It's called Little Plate. It's a Sound Toys thing. Yeah, it's a Sound Toys plugin. It's just a really simple reverb. So I've added that, messed around with the mix a bit, so it's not too much, just to give it a bit of character. The Crystallizer plugin is a good one. So this is another Sound Toys thing. This is more of a echo delay plugin. So I brought the delay down to quite a small amount, so it's very quick. It's not like choo choo choo. It's more upped the recycle knob quite a bit. The recycle knob basically feeds the output of the sound back into this plugin by a certain amount. So you can kind of amplify the sound and start delaying the delay essentially. Brought the pitch down a little bit. Also adjusted the splice setting, and I believe what that does is it kind of takes a certain amount of time of your sound or your track, and that's what it repeats. So for me, it's going to repeat 1.8 milliseconds of my track over and over again. And then finally, I messed around with the pitch even more. Well, I used to actually. The first one just brings it down by 7 semitones. But the second one, it takes that new drop down pitch of the track by 7 semitones and it brings it down even more. But what you can see is I've adjusted the mix setting. So 60% of what you're hearing is that 7 semitone dropped sound being slowly dropped even further, because what I'm going to do is actually automate this. So that drops even further, but 40% is just that -7 semitones sitting where it is. You've got one signal basically going, and the other that's just dong like that. There we go. So that sounds quite cool. That's combined with this sound. So that's the kettle lid being slammed down. And again, I've stretched that out as you can see. So starting with a pitch shifter, just straight up dropped it by an octave. So it sounds nice and low. I wanted this to be a very boomy, low-endy sound, but I kind of, if I did just that, it sounded too, well, I'll play it to you. It sounded too distant and like it was coming from behind a wall, so I didn't like that. And we've also got some compression. Again, it's kind of quick compression, so as soon as the sound plays, it will wait 0.34 milliseconds and then bring it down. Again, that's because I want a sharp attack. And then finally, I've added the little play again and just a bit of reverb. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the kind of attack sounds. I might do more. What I might come back and do is add like a fade in, like a quick one, before we actually hear that thud, that attack sound. So all together now, we've got this. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at so far, and I'll get back to you when I've made some more progress. Okay, so I've moved on to those kind of sustained long sounds I was talking about earlier, where the kettle's kind of just boiling, and it's taking up the majority of these electric spark animation-y parts, and messing around with a combination of pitch, EQ, and a bit crushing plugin I've got. I've come up with a really cool staticky sound, so let me quickly play that to you on its own. I mean, that's perfect, isn't it? I kind of accidentally stumbled upon that. But I'm going to rock with it because that sounds really good. So what I did, using this plugin called Crush, upped the drive and upped the DWSP, which kind of like, from my understanding, messes with the sample rate of the original sound. EQ'd it, so I got rid of all the mids and the lows, and we're just listening to the high end. And then I shifted it down a semitone. So yeah, we're doing well. So I've stumbled across a kind of maybe sound. I'm not sure whether I'll keep it or not. Let me quickly play you what I've got. In fact, this is what it was before. And now this is what it sounds like with the processing I've added to it. Sounds very weird, doesn't it? EQ'd it, first of all, again, bringing out all the high end. Next is a reverser. This is a plugin by Kilohertz. This is really cool. What it does is it plays you your track, but it also plays a reversed copy of that on top of the original signal. Let me take these last two off and show you what that sounds like on its own. See, it's sounding kind of weird, isn't it? But I'm worrying it sounds a little too sloshy, like water, and not as kind of sharp as electric might sound. Next plugin is Transgate. This is like a fancy tremolo. I really like this plugin. Instead of just going on, off, you can kind of set patterns that you want your tremolo to follow. It comes with an envelope, so what's quite cool is I can set a really short attack time, so the tremolo opens quickly. Really short release time, so it closes quickly. But I can kind of adjust the decay and the decay rather, and the sustain of the sound whilst it's being played. So as you can see, I've just set that to go really, really quick to kind of chop it up and make it sound more sharper. Finally is the same distortion bit crushing plugin I talked about earlier. For this one, I wasn't really sure what to do distortion-wise, so to be honest, I've just kind of flicked through the presets and found one that sounded kind of cool. And that left us with this sound. Which now I'm listening to it sounds a bit much. I don't like that. Sometimes there's a little I kind of want to get rid of. Okay, there we go. That sounds a bit better. So I've adjusted the crush and I've took the modulation off of it. So now instead of changing, it's going to just sit at 60%. And what crush does, it kind of adjusts the bit depth, so the little bits of information, of data that, makes up a sound file. So yeah, let me play what I've got so far now. Sounding pretty cool. In fact, I think I'm going to bring this one down a bit. Okay, so I've still got some adjusting to do with the mix, especially, but yeah, it sounded really cool. Okay, another quick update. I've turned this sound into this. It kind of adds like a sinking feeling, like, obviously this is meant to be, let's quickly have a look. This is meant to be a Sith Lord kind of zapping someone, so it's obviously meant to be evil and dark. And I kind of like the idea of having this tone pitched down, going, ooh. It's sucking the hope out of the victim who's like, losing their life or whatever. So I quite like that. This recording had quite an interesting resonance around the 300 area. If I play it to you with the EQ. That's kind of what I'm dragging. Well, I'm dragging all of it down pitch-wise, but because that resonance is going, ooh, it creates that dropping sound, so that's quite cool. Yeah, this is the pitch shifter. As you can see, it's being slowly brought down. That's the first thing added. Then an EQ. I might change this. There's not much going on in it. It's just kind of controlling the extreme highs and the extreme lows. I'm trying to make this kind of sound out almost ghostly, I suppose. So lots of reverb for this. Messed around with this chorus plugin. To be honest, I just randomized it and it sounded quite cool, so I stuck with that. I've also added this phaser, which again adds that kind of ethereal, ghostly sound. Settings on these I'm not quite satisfied with yet. I'm still tweaking them. What I also did is I went back to that previous track. Well, what I noticed in the animation, if this electrical stream goes at a certain rate, like a certain speed, but compare it to the seconds app, this one here. We'll look at the first one again. And then the second one. The second one looks a lot quicker. Those kind of ripples are moving a lot faster. So what I've done is I've tried to replicate that by adjusting the resolution of the trance gate or the tremolo. So now the speed in which we kind of turn the tremolo on and off is going to increase for that second electric attack. It's also going to slowly increase as the electricity is kind of pulled back towards the character. So let me play how this sounds to you now. So that rippling effect is now sped up. So let's have a listen to where I'm at with everything. Sounds good. So I've just added a few more plugins to that track I was messing around with where I'm dropping the pitch. Added some reverb using the little plate reverb from Sound Toys, and again the crystallizer. Again, I'm just slapping loads of effects on just to make it sound as distant and as ethereal as possible. Just started the next track, but I've not done a lot. I've just added a short reverb to it, and as you can see, I've also automated some mutes. As soon as the animation stops, I'm just cutting out all of the signal. Some of you eagle-eyed viewers may have noticed that my Close to Boil track, the one that's the main electrical sparkle that we created earlier, is clipping. Well, do you know what? Sue me. I'm gonna leave it clipping so I get a few square waves. I kind of feel like it adds to the distortion-y, crunchy electrical sound. So I'm gonna see what happens if I just leave it clipped. And go from there. If it does sound horrible, then I'll remove it. But yeah, another thing I've done is I've taken the main parent group bus track thing called Sustained Sound. I've added a compressor, but what I'm doing is I'm sidechaining the signal from the attack sound. So when that FUD comes in, I'm going to lower the signal that's coming from this track, or the electric sound. And then as the attack sound fades out, this will start to fade in again. To do that in Reaper, in case you're curious, is you add the recomp plugin to the track you want to duck, change detector input from main input left and right to auxiliary input left and right, then pick the track, that signal you want to control this track, and you click on the little symbol here that says root, click on that, and then you create a send, which is what I've done here. So you go to the, add new send, there you go. So you click add new send, then change the audio tracks from, this will be 1 to 2, change that from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, and then what it'll do is it'll send a signal into this track that the compressor can then monitor. So one more time, this is where I'm at so far. Sounded pretty cool, I'm loving it. Okay, so not only have I made a few more changes, but I actually stepped away and took a break, because I started noticing that not only were the sounds I was messing around with not achieving the results I wanted, but I was also getting a bit lazy. I was just going, oh, I'll slap a delay on, I won't edit it. So let me quickly fill you in on the main things that I changed before I took my break. The first thing is this intro sweep. In fact, the intro sweep is the main thing. All it is really is just some steam coming from the kettle. Let me play it on its own. There we go. And then if I quickly turn the processing on, we got a whoop kind of sound. So what I've done is I've just automated some pitch. You can kind of see, there we go, it's starting from -22 semitones. And then as you can see from the automation, I'm kind of just sweeping it up to 2 semitones. I'm still kind of adjusting that, not sure quite where I want it. Don't want it to go too high, otherwise it sounds too light, almost comical. Let's have a listen to what it sounds like with the rest of the attack sounds. And then with the rest of the sounds. I think it sounds pretty cool. I might even add another one in front of the second little attack as well. Another thing I've done was, you know, earlier when I said, do you know what, screw it, I'm going to make my sparks clip. Yeah, that sounded horrible. So I took that down. I've kind of done some rebalancing. I'm also trying to reorganize some of these tracks that, you know, I'm using for the main sustained electric sound, because things are starting to get a bit messy. What I want to do is continue focusing on the sustained electric attack and then move on to the ripple. I think I want to take a sound where I can kind of use some modulated filters. I feel like there needs to be some swirling and I'm just not getting. There's plenty of staticky crunch, which is good, but I just feel there needs to be more movement in it. So I'm going to try and work out how to do that. That tone as well that I'm dropping down slowly going, ew, I might try and duplicate that and then take the second one and change its pitch slightly, so we've got 2 of different tones going down. I feel that might kind of layer it and build it up a bit. Sounds a bit weak on its own at the moment. Yeah, I'll get back to you again once I've made some more progress. So I think I found where I'm going to get that whooshy sound I was on about earlier, and I think it's using this. This is called Granular. It's a granular synthesizer that I just found installed in Reaper. I forgot I even installed this. I think I just downloaded it for free. And if I did, I'll drop a link so you guys can check it out. So what it's going to do is it's going to take an audio file that I give it, and it's going to kind of chop it up into kind of grains, and then it's going to sample those specific chunks it's made for us to mess around with. And I've already kind of, all I've done is tweaked the grains dial, which adjusts how long each grain is, or how many grains you have per second, and adjust the frequency at which it plays those grains back at. I've only adjusted those two, and I've already got a really cool sound to start with. So that's just the audio file on its own bubbling. Now if I load up this duplicate of it with the grains and the frequency changed. Ooh. It's already starting to sound really weird, so this is what I think I'm going to use. Done a little bit more tweaking, and I found something really cool that happens when you adjust the length. So by length, I'm guessing this means the kind of length of the actual grain. And what happens is the longer they get, the more they start to kind of overlap. Now that's sounding very electrical, I'm liking that. Okay, so after messing around with some modulators, which I added to the grains, so it doesn't just stay at a static rate, as well as adding a little bit of distortion into the signal and boosting the amplitude a bit, so it's a bit louder and a bit harsher, I've come up with this. And I've EQ'd it a bit, just because it was very low-endy. And then some tremolo, give it a bit of a ripple. What I like about this is before is a lot of the sounds we've had so far are they're not still, there's stuff going on, but this one's got a lot more movement to it, which I suppose is where those modulators are helping out. Okay, so what I've done, now that I'm happy with the sound, I basically recorded it on the track that I'd attached to Granular Synth 2. So I changed the recording, well, I changed the input from recording the input from my audio interface and my microphone to the output of the actual track itself. So I just clicked record, output, multi-channel. Probably didn't need to do that because I just needed the, the two stereo channels as part of the track and not anything more. And then with all the effects on and it kind of buzzing away, just armed the track, hit record, and it recorded the granular synth, as you can see here. And then I've just turned the effects off because I no longer need them, and I'll probably remove them now, so I can start adding some new effects to this recorded sound. So let's quickly have a listen to that fitted in, well, roughly fitted in with the rest of our sound. I really like that. It sits really nicely underneath everything. Chopped it up a bit more. What I did is I've done pitch automation, similar to the draining live sound earlier. So now we're getting a very subtle drop in pitch, just going, and again, it's that kind of hopelessness that I'm trying to emulate through doing that. That sinking feeling, I really like that. Then with the drain live sound, let me come over to that. Basically, I've duplicated it. So I've got two copies of it now, both of which, again, they're doing the slow pitch drop, which is this line here. I've also just added this automation to the mute just to make sure, because there's loads of effects on these tracks. I don't want it to bleed over too much once the attack's done. So I'm just muting it to make sure all the real-time effects are being cut off once the animation stops. Now, the two differences between the duplication. So the first one, what I've done, I've added some distortion to the signal that's then getting processed by all this stuff. The pitch shifter, EQ, the phase, reverb, chorus, more reverb, etc. If I go back to the EQ, another thing I've done is I've tried to bring out the mid, so I get kind of like a howling wind sound, which you'll hear in a bit, where it's like, it's almost like a whistle. The second one, yeah, so I didn't add the distortion. What I did add is a bit of tremolo, and I've added some stereo separation. So just in the stereo fields, it's going to sway a little bit. Let me quickly play what these two sound like on their own. Let's play all the sustained sounds together. Sounded really weird, I like that. And then, let's play the whole thing. So hopefully you can hear that kind of howling in the background though. Ooh. It needs a tiny little bit of balancing, but it's really coming along. But something I do want to share with you is what I've done with the live drain, but then I've automated that peak, and I'm sort of moving it around. So let me play you the track whilst you can see the EQ. That kind of really adds to it, especially at the end when the electricity is coming back in and I pull it right down to the really sub-low frequencies. You get like a sucking in kind of effect. So you know what? I think I'm pretty happy with what I've got for the glowy whatever that is already. What I did is, you might remember I had two different recordings. Well, I removed the one with the crackling, and I've just taken that recording of the full boil, but I've taken another copy of the audio file, but this time stretched it out quite far. So now we've got one really stretched and one really squished. Okay, so the squished one is going to act as kind of like a high hissy sound because, well, if we look back at the glow, I feel like whenever you've got something bright, so bright that it's almost turning white in color, which is what this is doing in the center. You need some sort of high-end hiss. Although with this entire sound, I want to make sure I keep things nice and evil and dark, so I don't want to overdo it on the high end and all the sparkly effects, so I've kept its level quite low. So that's what I did with the squished one. Then with the stretched one, this is what we've got. So this is the opposite. This is a bit more of a low-end, haunting, whooshy kind of sound. With both of them, the squished one, so I've pitched it down here with the pitch shifter, but then with the crystallizer, I've actually increased the pitch. By dropping it down and bringing it back up, it adds kind of some really weird artifacts. And then I've kind of just done some drastic EQ. I don't want it too high and hissy, otherwise it hurts your ears a bit. And added a little extra reverb. So just layering up some reverb. And then with the stretched one, just some EQ. Again, keeping it nice and low. A little bit of reverb, pitch shifter. Well, down one semitone. There you go. Oh, actually, no. To be fair, I do prefer the tone down by a semitone combined with this track. I think it sits a little bit better. And then all together, let's combine the two. We get this. There we go. So it's quite subtle, which I think is good because we've already got a lot of sounds. We can't keep throwing stuff in, otherwise it's already pretty muddy, to be honest, the mix, so I don't want to do too much. So let's now have a listen to what that sounds all together. Yeah, the only problem is Reaper's starting to slow up a bit. As you can see there, the animation is kind of getting really choppy. So that's the only thing. What I might have to do is start rendering out some videos so we can see it better.
Okay, now I know I said I was done with all the sustaining sounds, but I lied because I've come up with something kind of cool. So I quickly went back to the granular sounds we made with Granular, duplicated it, but the first track, I've removed the pitch automation where we were dropping the pitch, and I've redesigned the EQ so it's just the kind of mids and the very highs, right? Then on the second one I've duplicated, I've kept the pitch shifting, so starting at 0 going down, but we're only doing it on the lows. So instead of shifting the entire frequency range, we can keep all these nice fizzy zappy sounds in the highs, and we can just bring the lows down even lower, so we get that deep woo while keeping the electric texture and character that it creates. So originally, if I quickly take the duplicated track, redesign the EQ, it sounded something like this. But now, if I put the EQ back and then solo both of them together, this is what it sounds like. So like I said, we keep the high ends, they stay where they are, and we keep the character, the zappiness, but we still get that low drop. So yeah, I think that really adds to it. Let's have a listen to how it sounds all together now. Kind of messed a little bit with the balancing there, so I'm going to have to come back to that. But yeah, I'm really liking it now. So not only have I moved rooms in between recording this, but I've also been editing the Purple Shockwave. So let's have another listen to them on their own. Okay, so with the processing on each individual track, I've not done a lot. I've just EQ'd it a little bit so there's no unnecessary low end in there. The processing I've mainly done on the actual bus track itself, the group bus, you could say. So all the effects are kind of being applied to both tracks. So starting off, we've got the crystallizer. Now, not only am I adding just a little bit of delay in there, I've adjusted the pitch of it, but what I'm doing is also automating that, as you can see here. So as it plays, as the ripple kind of expands out and then contracts, the pitch is going to drop and go and make it kind of feel like everything's being sucked into it. Then what I did with the EQ is I took band 3 and I've boosted it slightly, and then what I've done, basically done the same thing we did with the life drain sound. I've automated it so that band 3 is going to move up the frequency spectrum as the sound plays, which you can see by this line here. Finally, I've added a bit of tremolo. Now this is where you really get the ripple effect, that kind of chugging sound, that and then let me add the tremolo. There you go, you get that chugging sound. So the last thing I added to the sound was just an ambience track that just kind of plays throughout the 9 seconds that we have of this clip. So what I did is just took a sound of the kettle boiling. What I first did is drop the pitch by 2 semitones, so quite drastically, as you can see here, to get that kind of low, rumbly background sound. I've also adjusted the pitch up again using the format shift option, so it's not kind of counteracting the original 2 semitones we dropped, but it's just adding some kind of frequencies back into it that are of a higher pitch, which just gives it a bit more character. EQ, pretty standard stuff. I just kind of made sure I focused on the low end, on the low mids particularly. Then I've added 2 reverbs. I've doubled up to really make it sound spacey. Added the little plate, which you can see is fully wet with a little bit of low cut. And then this O-Real River reverb, which I've used a few times in my previous videos. And this one's quite nice because it's just got a little bit more settings than the little plate one, so I've got a bit more control over it. So I just made sure the decay time was nice and long, decent room size. Again, made sure there's no dry signal, only wet signal. So that got me this. But then what I accidentally done, and I don't know how I managed this, but I accidentally copied some of those plugins over to the actual region itself. Okay, so the way you do that in Reaper is you right click on your region, go to Item Properties, take effects, and then you can apply effects to that region. So now let's have a listen with them all on. There we go, and I think that one's just a little bit more balanced, not too boomy, and a little bit more kind of subtle and fits in with the rest of the sound quite well. And also fits the kind of scale and the environment that we're in, which is like a sci-fi spaceship almost thing. So yeah, let's now have a listen to everything. What I've also done is done a bit of balancing level-wise and just a minor adjustments to some of the effects we've added to everything. Oh, sorry, actually one big change I also did is I copied the kind of intro, the attack sounds we added at the beginning, and I brought them over to that second little mini attack. So now the second mini attack also has its own little kind of anticipation sound to tell the player that a bigger sound is about to come up. So let's have a listen to everything all together. I am very happy with how that's come out. That's it from me. Thanks very much for watching. Let me know if you want some more sound design videos from this channel or more Wise stuff, Fmod stuff. I'm really looking forward to, well, really getting stuck in now with some more audio stuff, you know, really providing some more content for you because I've slowed things up recently. But yeah, as always, I've been Henry Scott. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.